Did you see the Sunday Night Football promo, Evan, with Michael Jordan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Who is the GOAT? That is the conversation many will have this week.
Michael Jordan also taking some digs at LeBron James in that, I think, like under the table.
Absolutely
yeah,
did. Yeah,
like kind of like little
with
kicks
it.
under the table.
Nothing wrong with that. So we get into the GOAT discussion once again between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers as their two teams will face off. As Rodgers told us, reminded us, and I feel like people do need to be reminded, Brady and Rodgers won't face off. Belichick said they won't be on the field at the same time, so I guess you can rule out any trick plays with Tom Brady playing defense. But Brady and Rodgers, who's the GOAT? That's the discussion, and there's two ways we can go with this discussion.
Right.
Who is? I feel like people use GOAT to talk about the best in the league.
First of all.
GOAT, greatest of all time. You can't say somebody is the GOAT right now because right now is not all time.
Right.
Right. You could talk about greatest in the league right now.
Greatest in the league.
Goal. So let me ask you this then. Before we get into the real GOAT, who is the goal? Is it either of these two guys?
Oh, yeah. I think that right now it's between these two guys and probably Drew Brees in New Orleans for the real goal at this moment.
So no Patrick Mahomes?
No, come on. Let's be real here.
We'll go goal-earn. Greatest in the league right now.
Yeah, no, it's not. Patrick Mahomes ain't in that conversation quite yet for me. But I think that Rodgers, and I've always said this, Rodgers is the most physically talented quarterback in the league right now.
Yes.
He can run with the ball. He can make every throw.
More so than Cam?
I would say so, because his downfield accuracy is so much better than Cam, and his ball placement.
Well, you just said physically.
That's fair. Okay, I hear where you're going.
We're nitpicking here, but it's an important discussion.
I think that Rodgers has more athletic ability. He has the ability to make every throw on the field, short, intermediate, long. He can throw the ball as far as Patrick Mahomes, and he can throw it as accurately as Drew Brees and Tom Brady. So I think that element of it, and even Brady said it himself, his just throw-making ability, his arm talent is as good as maybe anybody in the history of the league. But there's the little things, like setting protections and reading defenses. And then there's also the big things like winning that, kind of separate Brady from Rodgers in the big picture sense of it when we get into the GOAT conversation. But I do think that right now, Aaron Rodgers is having a better season than Tom Brady is having.
And I think it's clear to say Tom Brady has taken a step back at this point, at least to this point this season. And he always starts slow. And we'll see what happens kind of on the back stretch as October turns to November is normally where Brady turns it on. But when you get to the GOAT conversation for me, it's an absolute no-brainer. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. Brady at his peak was better than Rodgers ever was. His peak, I mean, they're both still going right now, but Brady's peak is probably
was
longer.
Brady's peak?
Brady's peak is still going. I
Was
think
2007 Brady's peak, or was 2016 Brady's peak?
I think you could say
or 2017.
Well, you can peak for a window. To me, it's not just about 1 year. Most guys peak for 3 to 5 years.
Brady's
going
decade.
on, I'd say a decade and counting.
Maybe
minus this year. We'll see how he finishes it. But Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. To me, there's a couple things that go into that conversation. And this is where you go like Bobby or Wayne Gretzky, right? Wayne Gretzky encapsulated what you want in a hockey player better than anybody else. But Bobby Orr changed the game.
Yeah.
And that's what a GOAT does. Aaron Rodgers, if you're building a quarterback in a laboratory up to today's standards, that's Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah.
He is the prototypical exactly what you want. Tom Brady changed the game with what he does pre-snap, with what he does working with his team off the field, the kind of leader he is, right? Tom Brady is above and beyond all that. The other thing for Rodgers, was he ever the best quarterback in the league? I mean, I know you said he might be right now, but I still have Brady ahead of him. I still have Manning ahead of him. I might still have Breeze ahead of him. Rodgers has the arm talent, like you said, but does not do a good job of protecting himself, which is important at that position. There have been questions about his leadership ability and what kind of teammate he is. And when you get to the postseason, it's not that rings should decide this, right? Dan Marino's still a good quarterback. But you can use him as a tiebreaker.
Right.
You can use them as, the fourth, fifth, sixth decision. Brady won. Rodgers is right there with Manning and Breeze, but he's had years too where he's missed the playoffs. Peyton Manning never missed the playoffs. Tom Brady doesn't miss the playoffs.
Right.
I don't get the whole GOAT conversation. I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers is the greatest Packers quarterback of all time.
Oh, here we go.
Bart Starr won how many Super Bowls?
I want to hear this one.
Brett Favre was an outstanding player, right? I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers, he might be the third best Packers quarterback of all time.
No. Okay, well, I think that with the GOAT conversation for me, it's actually, it's good that they used Michael Jordan in the promo, I think, because it's a very similar argument, right?
Yes.
Michael Jordan is Tom Brady and LeBron is Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's basically the same thing. I think that you could say that LeBron is maybe a more physically talented basketball player than Michael Jordan, just like you could say that about Aaron Rodgers. But the winning, the relentlessness, the constant drive to be great is what separates Tom Brady, I think, from a lot of athletes in general, not just quarterbacks and ranking quarterbacks. That consistent effort to be great year in and year out, that absolute tenacity, that eye of the tiger, if you will, that him and Michael Jordan have, separates those two athletes from other champions in across all of sports. I would say it's really just a few guys that have that kind of tenacity and that kind of willpower. So I really think that that's kind of where it goes. I know that's kind of like it's superlative type stuff. It's not necessarily
I think you
direct,
have to go into it when you're having this argument.
Yeah, I think you do too, because it's not just about physical talent. It's kind of about the mystique of them too, right? And it's kind of about their whole resumes in terms of everything that they have done. I think the biggest argument for Tom Brady's favor that doesn't get discussed a lot because it's not an attribute, it's not arm strength, it's not processing, longevity, and just the ability to stay healthy, durability.
Well, again, the fact that he's been in his peak for what feels like 10 years.
But it's the durability of it. He is never injured, knock on wood, right? He has never gotten hurt other than 2008.
He takes care of himself, which is something that Rodgers doesn't do a good job of. You see him taking hits. You see, and look, extending plays in the pocket is always good, and you hear Tom Brady say this. At a certain point, you need to know when to end the play.
Right. And I think that durability, I mean, until Aaron Rodgers can consistently put together 16 to 18 to 19 game seasons, depending on how far he takes his team in the playoffs, that's going to be a feather in Tom Brady's cap, because Tom Brady is never injured, and there's something to that.
How many extra seasons has he played in the playoffs?
Essentially,
I think it's like 2 or 3 at this point.
And you know what? Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. And I think that the biggest part of this type of argument is if you switch the players, switch the two players, give Rodgers, Bill Belichick, and this Patriots team over the last decade, give Brady this Packers team. I think that Rodgers probably has a couple more rings than he has now.
A couple more, but we didn't get into the weapons conversation yet, but you could. Look who Rodgers has been throwing to. Guys like Randall Cobb, Devontae Adams, Jimmy Graham.
I mean, I wouldn't say Rodgers' supporting cast is that much better than Rob Gronkowski and Julian Edelman and Brandon Cooks last year.
But how often are Gronk and Edelman hurt?
Yeah.
Right?
That's fair.
To me, it comes down to this. When you have this conversation, you mentioned the mystique around it, right? To be the GOAT at something, right? If you say basketball, the first names that come up are either going to be Jordan or LeBron, right? When you say hockey, Gretzky or Lemieux.
Rodgers
when you
is
say
not
baseball,
in that.
Ruth. Right. Aaron Rodgers doesn't transcend the sport.
I would say it's almost still Joe Montana in that conversation.
Exactly. And that's where Montana's kind of hanging on in that GOAT conversation. Because when you talk about, forget football players, just the greatest winners of all time. It's a 3-man list for me. It's Muhammad Ali, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, and if you want to throw Michael Phelps in there, you can.
Where's Michael Jordan? You got to put Michael Jordan in there.
But if you just want to talk about raw winners, pure
and you got to put Bill Russell in there. Don't insult
that's fair. That is fair. Russell does
right
belong in there, but when you talk about the great winners, the great champions in the history of North American sport, people will throw Tom Brady in there. You're never going to hear Aaron Rodgers put that
and Aaron Rodgers has that ring, so he's not quite there, in Dan Marino's category. But to me, he's more Dan Marino than he is Tom Brady. And that's not an insult, because I think Dan Marino is a top 10 quarterback of all time and is obviously a Hall of Famer. But Dan Marino never broke through for that Super Bowl. I get that. But just in terms of raw physical ability and arm talent and throw ability, go watch Dan Marino throw the ball. I mean, it's amazing.
All over the field,
it's incredible. I think Aaron Rodgers is more in that kind of vein, that type of quarterback. Now, if he has like a John Elway situation where he wins 2 on his way out or something like that, then maybe it changes.
The narrative.
But right now, Aaron Rodgers is a very, very talented quarterback. He's got to do more for me in January and February.
What do you guys think? Weigh in on the GOAT discussion down below in the comments. If you're pissed about anything we said, at Patriots CLNS on Twitter,
like leaving
let
Bill
us hear
Russell
it.
Out.
All right, that is my one mistake I made in this conversation. I apologize for that. He's Evan Lazar. I'm Alex Barth for CLNS Media. Thanks for watching.